but you could not tell me where. You were in hiding. And you came to the phone and said that for security reasons, you were all alone. You had no staff with you, no aides, no friends. And that you had not been able to walk outside. You had not been able to get fresh air. You'd not seen the sun in some time. So the first thing I would like to say is I am so glad to see you. We are so glad to see you out in the world and healthy and well. So welcome.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank you.
For people wondering, yes, for people wondering where you are now, you're in the United States, speaking to us obviously via video link. Would you like to share where, or just leave it that?
I will leave it there.
Okay, in the United States, so still in a somewhat undisclosed location. You left Venezuela to go collect your Nobel Peace Prize. Congratulations. You gave your prize to Donald Trump. Why?
Well, first of all, we have to understand what this has meant for the Venezuelan people, what has happened this year. It's been 27 years of brutal devastation, not only of our institutions, of our resources, of our families. I mean, a third of Venezuelan population has been forced to flee. It is currently the largest migration crisis in the world. And this has been done by a criminal regime that intentionally wanted to destroy our country and took over our territory and institutions, allied with the worst forces, criminal forces around the world. So during years, we have denounced and proved the world the degree of crimes that were committed in Venezuela and demanded for international support. Finally, we are seeing decisive action on the part of the United States government under the leadership of President Trump. And I have to say something. The only country that has risked the lives of some of its citizens for the freedom of Venezuela is the United States. So we are very grateful because what happened on January 3rd definitely opens the path, opens the way for a transition to democracy in Venezuela. That's why we did it on behalf of the Venezuelan people.
So I do hear your message of gratitude to the United States, but why give it your Nobel Peace Prize? Why give it to Donald Trump?
Well, I believe it's fair, and it represents the feeling, the profound gratitude of the Venezuelan peoples, not only for what he has done, but what we believe and trust will take place very soon in Venezuela in terms of transforming our country from the criminal hub of the Americas into the energy hub and the technology hub of our continent.
What did you get in return?
Well, I'm not expecting to get nothing specific. What we are determined is to work together, not only with the United States, but also engage other democratic countries around the world into the first liberation and rebuilding of a nation that has huge potential. I want to, highlight this. Venezuela not only has, incredible natural resources, oil, gas, gold, minerals. Venezuelan location is unique from a geopolitical and economic perspective, and has huge territory. It's 1 million square kilometers with important infrastructure. So, this is a moment in which we need the world to act, not only, warn or support in words, but actual action in order to dismantle this structure. And that's what I believe it's going to take place as we move ahead.
And there's many more details I want to get into on the future of Venezuela and what you would like to see happen and what plans are being made. Let me just stick for a minute on your plans. When will you go back to Venezuela?
Well, I will go back as soon as possible when I accomplish actions and objectives that I have in place right now. It means engaging with international actors directly, one-on-one, which I had not been able to do because, as you're aware, I had been banned from leaving Venezuela for over 12 years. And also because I believe there is a lot of organization that has to be done internationally. So I'm doing the job abroad, and as soon as I can, I will go back to a country in which many things are taking place as we speak.
Do you need America to facilitate that? Do you need American permission to go home to Venezuela?
Oh, no, not permission. But certainly I would say that we desire, we will have coordination.
And how will you know when you can return?
Well, as I said, many things are happening. There are a lot of things that I'm in the process of accomplishing. And when the right moment arrives, I will tell the Venezuelan people that it's time to go back home. And not only me. I have to say, Marie-Louise, that you are aware that thousands of Venezuelan political leaders have been forced to flee. They want to go home. And millions of Venezuelans, almost 9 million, are scattered all around the world and have a profound desire to go back home. And that will only take place. All those millions will only go back home when they're sure they have certainty that we're moving into a transition to democracy, because it's not only about economic recovery. It's basically about having trust that we will have democracy and freedom and opportunities for them and their children.
María Corina, I just want to ask the blunt question to allow you to respond. The state of play is that you are not in Venezuela. The U.S. is driving the agenda in your country right now. You're not there. You don't control the oil. You don't control the army. To those who wonder if you have been sidelined, what do you say? Have you been sidelined?
Well, I've heard that for years, because at the end, you usually get profound analysis and scenarios and formulas that have dozens of variables, but always leave one on the side, which is the most important of all, and that's the people. And we've come to this point because the people of Venezuela decided to be free and decided to risk everything in order to have a democratic country to which their children could come back.
But do you have any leverage from outside the country?
From outside and from inside. And from inside. I mean, I was in hiding during 16 months, and we never stopped working, organizing, and communicating. We have a network of citizens organized that were 1 million volunteers for the electoral process, and that have turned into an underground, real-time communication platform of individuals ready to act civically and moving ahead into a democratic transition, and to support this process as well.
So Chris Wright, the U.S. Energy Secretary, was in Venezuela this week. He is, I believe, the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit since Nicolas Maduro was ousted. He met Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president at Miraflores, the presidential palace. There were photographs of them smiling and shaking hands and a big band playing. I just wonder what was going through your head as you watched that.
Well, just think where we were 5 weeks ago and where we are right now. Everybody thought it was impossible to have Maduro face his international law, and where he is right now. So what's important to think is what Ms. Rodriguez is thinking right now after what they've said. They know, the world knows, they are part of a criminal structure. She's an essential part of the cartel. She was the one who was the architect and overlooked the torture system and the repressive structure. And she is the main link with Russia, Iran, Cuba, and so on. Everybody knows that. So we are in a process in which the remains of the regime are following orders from the United States in a phase where they are being part of the dismantling of this regime. What we believe now is that we need to move forward into this transition once the rest of the repressive structure is further dismantled and weakened. And that's the direction in which we should move ahead now.
But I guess my question again, what is it like to be sitting outside Venezuela, watching the U.S. shaking hands and making deals and signing contracts with people who you just described as running a cartel and remnants of the regime? These are the same, Delcy Rodriguez and others, who were leading the country and crushed the will of the Venezuelan people in the presidential election of 2024.
We all know this is not sustainable. We all know this is a phase in which the restoration of institutions is just starting. As I said, it starts with the dismantling of the repressive structure, but in a country that currently is located in the last place worldwide in rule of law, the only way you can have long-term, massive investments, not only in oil and gas, but in all other sectors in which Venezuela has unique and huge potential, requires legitimacy in the institutions, required constitutional compliance, and certainly the support of the people. And what we are watching, and we have fought for this very long, is a process taking place and advancing at a pace that we certainly want to move ahead and to accelerate. And we're doing our part outside and inside.
So you mentioned oil and gas. Let's stay on that for a moment. The U.S. imposed order that seems to be emerging is oil, gas, business first, and then we'll deal with democracy and human rights and free speech and all the rest of it. A, do you agree that that appears to be how things are taking shape? And B, is that the right order?
Well, we believe that many things have to be addressed simultaneously in Venezuela because of the degree of destruction and simultaneous crisis we have. We have a humanitarian crisis, we have economic crisis, we have a public service crisis, and certainly a security one. So all these issues need to be addressed simultaneously. The Secretary of State has been clear in saying that these phases can overlap, and that's part of the work we're doing right now to be sure.
But in terms of the sequencing, I'm sorry to jump in terms of the sequencing, you're okay with that it's the Energy Secretary who's the first senior U.S. official to set foot that we know of in Venezuela since last month?
Well, to be clear, the first actions that actually took place were the initial release of political prisoners, and that's taking place as we speak. 480 have been released so far. Still, there are over 800 in prison, but this is huge. And we're starting to see that the consequence of this release of political prisoners is a reaction from Venezuelan society, mobilizing, gathering, demanding in the streets, something that was unthinkable a month ago, unthinkable. So we are seeing certain progress. Of course, it's not enough. Of course, we want this to move further and more and accelerate it. And that's precisely our job right now. The Venezuelan people inside demanding for, civic rights to be totally restored, because at the end, you cannot talk about a transition if you have repression. And that's what we are demanding right now. And that's what we demand from the international community to support us at this stage.
Speaking of political prisoners, just this week, one of your closest political allies was arrested by heavily armed men wearing civilian clothes. He was held without anyone knowing his whereabouts. I'm talking about Juan Pablo Guanipa. He is now under house arrest, is my understanding. Is he okay? Do you know?
Actually, I spoke with Juan Pablo last night. You, as you say, you're right. He's one of our closest colleagues and friend. He had been detained for almost a year, and he was released last week. And the same day he was released, a couple of hours later, he was taken and disappeared again. He is in his house right now, but he's under house arrest. His house is surrounded by security personnel. But I want to highlight one thing, Maria Luisa. I've been speaking with dozens of Venezuelans that have been excarcerated in the last days and hours. If there's something that I'm, really impressed and moved, is the determination and will that they have when they go out. The first thing they do is that they call me in the car and they tell me, what do I have to do right now? And I tell them, you have to go home, you have to hug your mother, you have to take a bath. And then they say, no. What do I have to do regarding my work, regarding Venezuelan liberation? And this is a kind of strength and energy that cannot be stopped. Venezuela will be free because of its people.
Although, in fairness, going home and hugging your mother is always good advice at all times and for all of us. Where does all this leave Edmundo Gonzalez, who won the presidential election in 2024, is now in exile in Spain? Do the results of that election just go away and we start over, or what happens?
But absolutely not. On the contrary. I mean, what took place on July 28th, 2024, was the most important milestone in Venezuelan democratic history. I mean, this is extraordinary. We not only won by a landslide, but we proved the world that the will of the people and the military is to move ahead into a transition to democracy. And I want to insist this here. I mean, in Venezuela, the electoral process is overlooked and protected by military. And that day, they were ordered to stop us from getting the tally sheets, and they disobeyed. So this is a proof that the wide majority of the armed forces and the police support us. Edmundo Gonzalez is the legitimate elect president, and precisely what gives legitimacy to what took place starting in January and what will happen in a transitional process and a transitional government that eventually will have general elections is because the people spoke and popular sovereignty was expressed.
You said eventually general elections. You created a little bit of a stir when you made comments, I think a week or two ago, giving some kind of timeline for when elections would happen in Venezuela, and the White House jumped in and said, not that, not so fast, we'll let you know. What is the timeline for general elections in Venezuela?
Well, one thing is what technically is possible, and the other is what politically feasible. What is technically possible, given the situation of the Venezuelan infrastructure and the destruction of the electoral registry, and how elections have been totally fraudulent and we have no results whatsoever, is to start dismantling the electronic system and building one that can give the Venezuelan population absolute trust in the results, and that you give the right for all Venezuelans inside and abroad to vote. So technically, we can have free and fair elections in the moment you start the process in 40 weeks. Certainly, there are political conditions that have to take place before and during that process. If you ask the Venezuelan people, I mean, over 80, 90% would say we want to move ahead into legitimate political process. We want elections. We want to participate. And that's part of our job. I mean, Venezuelans inside and abroad demanding what we believe our country is ready to do. And I want to insist here because I know there is a lot of concern regarding, the possibly violence or disruptions in a transition and comparisons between Venezuela and previous Middle East and other regions' experiences. I want to insist on this. Venezuela has unique conditions. We have a democratic culture. We had 50 years of democracy. We have a civil society that is cohesive, united with no religious, racial, or regional factions. We have a legitimate leadership, a united opposition, and we have the support, as I said before, of the majority of the armed forces. So a transition to democracy will be orderly, will be peacefully, and as soon as it takes place, it would be better for not only for Venezuelans, but also for the region and certainly for the United States.
So is the short answer to when Venezuela will hold elections as soon as possible, but we don't know?
Yes, that's true, but we do know what we have to do, and we are doing it in order for that to take place.
I'm going to open it to the floor in just a minute, but I have one more question, which is, I'm just curious what your contact is with the U.S. administration, with the White House, with Secretary Rubio. How often do you talk to him?
Well, we have permanent communication with different levels and actors, not only in the U.S. government, but also with Congress and other sectors of the United States society. Very, very frequent with all these sectors. And I want to insist in one thing. It's remarkable, given that, you know, the dynamics today of the United States, that Venezuela is a bipartisan issue because of the national security dimension of the conflict in place in my country. I've been in contact with members of Congress on both parties, and it is absolutely clear that it is a top priority for the national security of the United States, for the stability of the region, and even for different agendas. I mean, migration, energy security, trade. This is a win-win situation for whoever has concerns on all these issues taking place right now.
All right. I know you all have questions for Maria Corina Machado, so bring them on. We've got microphones. If you signal me, raise your hand, we'll get a mic to you. Yes, sir. If you would identify yourself and keep your questions short, that would be great.
Of course. Kenneth Barragan from the United States. Señora Machado, un placer y que viva Venezuela. My question is, for the millions of Venezuelans who are outside of Venezuela, what is your message to them, and what tangible actions do you recommend that they take to support the process that will be unfolding?
Thank you so much for that question. I have to tell you something. I am impressed and moved in what I've seen so far in terms of the support of individuals, citizens from other countries that jump to me, run to me, and tell me that what's going on in Venezuela, it's a matter of, you know, existential priority for the rest of the region. People from Nicaragua, from Cuba, from Colombia, from Brazil, I mean, all around the region. We need our talent. We need our children to come back home. Venezuelans that are working nowadays in the oil sector in the Middle East or in Canada, people that are being forced to flee and have started their own business but dream to come back home. So imagine for the Venezuelan economy to move ahead and to be able to take advantage of our potential, we not only need billions and billions of investment that require rule of law and so on, but also these Venezuelans to come back home. And I insist, they desperately want to do it, but they only will come back when they have, you know, certainty that a democratic process is in place. We need a date for elections, and we need certainty that freedom and respect for all will take place.
Other questions?
Thank you. My name is Michael Keating, based in Brussels. What are your expectations of Europe?
Well, that's a very good question. We certainly have had support from the European Parliament throughout these years, you know, all along the political spectrum, something we very much appreciate. Certainly, several countries that have been very active in terms of denouncing the crimes against humanity and the corruption networks that operate in Venezuela. We nowadays believe we need much more than that, because we need, as I said, to move from, joint statements to actions. As we had said during years, we need to block the criminal cash flows that the regime has and that are used for repression and corruption and further enlargement of their criminal activities. We need to block those